everyone, Kaya here. I'm also known as the girl with the lotus tattoo. I'm here recording my very first podcast. I'm really excited. I have two guests with me here today, Quinn and Lee. We were going to talk about the topic of competitive EDH, and I also received a lot of questions through Twitter and Facebook. So we're going to go ahead and dive on into the subject, and we're going to answer some questions.
Thank you for having me.
Why, hello there. This is Lee. And I'm already screwing this up. That's my contribution to the podcast. Good night, people.
Good night. All right, guys. So the first question I have here is cEDH a different format than Commander?
Well, it certainly is. All the C is in that anagram there is competitive. With competitive, you have the mindset of your deck is very well tuned and very consistent. Whereas regular Commander, it's going to be a lot more, you bring a deck of your friends, you're playing something that you just love to play, you have a lot of fun, maybe it's a tribal deck, maybe you like equipment, maybe you like lands. You can have a lot more fun playing in a casual field because you can do something that's more personal to you. Where competitive, it's a little bit different in the sense that you're building decks to be consistent and more harsh on your opponents. You're trying to stop your opponents from doing what they want to do, and your goal is just to win as quick as possible. And there's a few more minute differences which we can certainly go into, but that's the general course that you want to look at between the two, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, if you had Commander as a spectrum, cEDH would be on the opposite, very far end of that. But the beautiful thing about competitive is it's very simple. There's no confusion. You're trying to win, and there isn't that deck imbalance because you're trying to go as hard as you can, so you bring the strongest thing that you could bring to the table. When it comes to regular Commander within itself, everyone has a different definition of what casual is. Everyone thinks that their deck is that fair deck, that perfectly middle ground. It's the exact same thing when you play video games. Anyone that's weaker than you is a noob. Anyone stronger than you is a hacker. And I think regular Commander runs into that same issue, unlike competitive. I think the biggest issue that you have between the two is where you have people trying to play both at the same time. So I think, again, when it comes to Commander within itself, it's supposed to be that very step above kitchen magic. You're trying to have fun with it. You're trying to do silly things. Maybe you're trying to win, but that's not the main focus of why you came tonight, where competitive it is.
And I think probably the easiest way to distinguish it is how consistently can you pull off a sooner than turn 4 win is a really good factor of establishing that. And not just a deck that can win in less than 4 turns, because there's plenty of decks that can do that. But I mean consistently through tutoring up your right pieces. Most of these competitive decks you're going to find have anywhere from 3 to even 10 tutors I've seen in some decks. So it's that consistency that you're really looking for to establish the difference between cEDH and Commander, what everyone's used to playing.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. With competitive, it's competitive. People are trying to win on turn 3 and turn 4. It's very high stakes. It's a lot of focus. It's a lot of being tactical, a lot of stopping your other opponent from winning, and you basically, it's just a race to be who's the first winner in the game.
I will tell you, there is a difference between EDH, competitive EDH, and then couples EDH. You want to talk about a level of competition? Try proving yourself as an EDH player, but also as a couple. Because the guy that wins, or the couple that wins, that's the strongest couple. I've seen that happen more times than not. Where you're not only playing to defend your honor as like a card player, but like if you lose, you lost the night.
So is that like a two-headed giant format, or are you guys still playing free-for-all?
It's low-key two-headed giant. We say it's free-for-all, but it is not that at all. No, it is dirty.
Yeah, I've ran into situations like that before where it's just basically low-key two-headed giant and the other couple's trying to be more superior than the other couple as far as personality, who's a better player, who knows their stuff more. It can get pretty bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, there are some couples that we play with, and they're very nice. They're like we play with a judge and his girlfriend, and they're amazing. We have never any chance of winning, but like we accept that. Like we just accept our place in like the lower end of society. That's fine. But you have some of them that again, if they lose, they're driving home in an argument, and we see that happen all the time. And, you know, it's really unfair because you see this dynamic where, because usually the girl's getting in for the guy, and so the girl's there to support the dude, and God forbid if that ever happens the other way around.
I've seen situations where if the girl has no other option but to hit their significant other, and they're looking at her like some kind of fire-breathing dragon, like, so help me, if you hit me, you're going to be sleeping on the couch tonight. And they're just like, I'm just going to pass turn. It's really sad to see that.
I've also seen like a little bit of the other spectrum as well. Like I've seen some couples play together and there'll be a little bit of, well, I could do this, which is the smart, you know, normal play would do, but I'll let you squeeze by, you know, because
I would love to have support on the battlefield. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. I usually have someone just gunning me down the entire time.
Well, you just gotta assume that.
Shots were fired first, so I saw red and I just go and murder you.
It was a 2-2. It doesn't do anything.
You did 2 damage to me.
But we had this one nightmare scenario, and that's why I brought it up, is because we actually watched a breakup happen over an EDH game.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're losing a relationship, that is truly competition.
Don't tell me there's something wrong with the relationship to begin with, though, wouldn't it? Or
I don't know what happened before, but I can tell you after Leopold, something went wrong quick.
And Yidris.
Oh my god, yeah, Yidris. That's what ended up, like, ruining his day. Because when you two went shopping, he was out after that.
Well, that hit the nail on the coffin.
Yeah, we went over to a pre-release, and it was fun. And it was a 2-headed giant pre-release or something thing like that. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, me and her went, and then the girlfriend and the boyfriend went. Actually, we met the person at the shop. Luan and all them tried to get me to talk to the girl to get her into the fold. Mm-hmm. Got her into the fold, and then we exchanged numbers to do the double date. I know. And so we're playing, and then things start happening and everything else. So to try and cool things down, she brings the other girl shopping while me and him are playing. And of course, now we're playing as men. We're not playing it to play anymore. We have to prove ourselves through a card game. And so he's playing Leopold, and it's just a nightmare. And then
right
what
there,
happens?
You don't have to play very far to know where that goes.
But what happened when you took her shopping? Because I remember it ended up being terrible.
Well, we just went shopping, but it was just funny because I remember coming back to that game and I asked him, I said, how are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm playing against Yidris. I don't like it. And I'm like, oh, hey, that's my deck. I'm really happy you're losing.
No one's helping during this. And then the double jacket fiasco, she buys a matching jacket for me. So the other girlfriend, being nice, she tries to do the same thing, and it did not end well. The jacket was the wrong size. Things were thrown. And keep in mind, I'm a crisis counselor. I've been setting up domestic abuse for years. I could have stopped this at any point, but he played Leopold.
I think you'd agree with me at some point, though. Like, there's obviously issues in that relationship if they're like getting to that point over like a card game or buying a jacket. It sounds like it was kind of set up to go to that direction.
Oh, yeah, it was doomed to fail.
Yeah.
So it basically ended where we had to take this person to like IHOP, and we had to calm them down. Keep in mind, my father died this night. This was a secondary thing of this night. If you ever ask me what happened on November 21st or whatever the date was, I won't say that's the day my father died. That's the day I witnessed a breakup over a card game.
Most people here would be very upset. You're more upset about the card game?
No, I was fine during all of it. She was upset. And keep in mind, my father's gone. This poor girl lost a relationship. This little monster is still trying to win. It's like, I ain't a loser like the rest of you. I'm going for the goal.
Oh yeah, just because your nights are terrible doesn't mean mine has to be. I'm going to cascade myself to winning.
Oh my God. Because it's nothing like losing everything else and then someone's just playing more to win.
But I think the bottom line is, though, that there's different ways of, being competitive in EDH, whether it's being couples or you're playing actual competitive EDH where you're trying to win on turn 2 or turn 3 or, early in the game. There's just competitiveness. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and I guess competitive EDH can be kind of broad to some people because, with your group of people, you might think that your deck that might win, fairly well by turn 6 or something. You're running maybe a couple tutors, you got some shocklands, and you got your fetches. You're thinking that you might be pretty competitive there. when the true point I noticed when I found I was in competitive is when turn 0, everyone is watching every single movement you take, because even on turn 0, there's a lot of important things happening. And I would say the most important part of cEDH is actually your initial opening hand and what hands you keep. That is probably the most important part that a lot of people overlook when it comes to competitive EDH, because if you make a mistake on your opening hand, it spells the doom pretty much for the rest of the game, because you don't have time to recover like in a regular casual format. You can't keep a 5-land hand.
I have to agree with that because I play competitive Xur, and if my opening hand isn't good, I pretty much lost the game. Even if I mulligan it and it's still coming up not good, I don't have enough lands, or I don't have my combo, at least 1 or 2 of my combo pieces, something that pretty much hits the nail on the coffin for me.
Yeah, competitive is weird because it's the only format that's really like competitive. I'm sorry, multiplayer, but still can be competitive. So of course your deck matters. Of course how you play matters. Of course, you know, your opening hand very much, especially in competitive EDH, especially matters. But one thing that you never hear anyone talk about in anything when it comes to competitiveness is how you are as a person. Because let's face it, you're the best player that we know, but you win just as much as Bloody Ho.
Yeah, I don't.
And he plays zombies. The difference is we know you're a threat and we go after you.
Yes, it is very true.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you play a blue land and I'm coming after you.
So I mean, realistically, you have to have that politics, and which is really hard because I hate saying the word politics, because for most people that we end up playing with, you know, they think, you know, being upset or like, you know, getting angry if you target them, that's some level of politics where you're like trying to aggressively point them in another direction. But if you have a smile on your face the entire time, you're probably going to win even if you're losing, because no one's taking you as serious as a threat, anything like that. But when you start shutting down or getting angry or trying too hard, people know to go after you.
Yeah, there's been some games where one of my strategies has been to stop and do nothing. In order to kind of fool my opponents into thinking that I have nothing. Because
you had to, out of a necessity.
I have to, yeah, because otherwise I am fighting off 3 people who are trying to combat me.
I've seen you do that before.
Yeah.
You'll not play anything, and I know you. I know you have your winning combo in your hand, but you're holding off so that people don't just immediately start targeting you, and everybody starts using their counters and everything else on other people. It's a good play. It's a good way
and I have to sometimes because there's been many times where I sat at the table and I felt animosity.
For good reason, I'm sorry.
Well, that's the great thing is because like you can go to a competitive table, and yeah, your chances aren't going to be high if you don't have a competitive deck, but you can still very much come out the winner because 3 people are just knocking themselves out trying to stop each other and combo off. And then if you're playing mid-range or you're playing something silly and no one's paying attention to you, they're going to die. Especially with the most tuned decks, they don't really have a lot of answers to board presence in terms of tokens and everything else, because they don't have to worry about that. They have to worry about stopping combo pieces.
Yeah, it was very
So when you have a silly, you know, mono green Omnath, or you have, you know, some token, or in our case, Bloody Ho and his zombies, it becomes they end up winning more often than not. I can't tell you, if someone brought a pre-con dragon deck to a competitive thing, he ended up winning.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that made me really sad inside because I spent so much money and time and practice on my deck, and I'm rolling my eyes at his stupid pre-con deck. I'm like, oh, you're not gonna win this. Like I'm sitting there all high and mighty. He ends up winning. How he won, I can't even tell you how he won. He just did because we wasted all our resources on each other and we just left him alone. Like, no, we're not even going to amuse the idea. And he ended up coming out winning. So, I mean, you know, honestly, sometimes luck does play into it, you know, depending on the cards you draw and how good things go. And if you get the right lands at the right time, there's a little bit of chance that does come into play with that. So that's the lesson, kids. Nothing matters. No one knows what's going on. And it's purely chance. Broadcast done. All right, guys. So for my next question here, how do you get casuals to understand what they're signing up for in competitive EDH tables?
That's a communication issue. People in general, you got to communicate when you're sitting down at a table and people are talking about, you know, how great their Avengers Zendikar play was last night. You're probably going to have a good idea that this may not be cEDH that you're about to sit down to. So you got to kind of read the room, so to speak. You got to kind of see what the other people are playing, maybe what cards they have, and of course ask. Inquire, ask questions. Oh, what kind of decks do you guys play? Are you guys playing cEDH? And if they just don't even know what you're talking about, well, that's a sign that you're probably not encountering a cEDH table. Vice versa, if you have people coming into you, you need to be vocal and communicate with them that you are playing a very high tier deck, and if they think they understand, warn them. So when they do sit down and play, if you can get inevitably stopped, because I've had a couple people do that, you gotta make sure that you have warned them ahead of time, because then it becomes rude in a sense.
Well, whenever I start playing my games, the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, what power level are we playing? Because I've got competitive decks, and I've got casual decks, and then I just have plain silly, chaotic decks, but no one ever wants me to play those.
No one wants you to play any of your decks, because they're all monstrosities. But
that's the thing, though. You want to ask, I always ask the power levels, and if, somebody seems confused by that, or what do you mean by competitive? I mean, this is a casual format, then you just give them an explanation as to competitive EDH and what it is.
And you maybe don't bring that deck out.
And maybe not bring it out.
Again, when it comes to competitive versus non-competitive, the communication's never on competitive. If you say you're playing competitive, that ends the conversation there and any confusion, because you're trying your best to win. What happens is when people pull out a competitive deck and saying they're not playing competitive. And that's where people get stomped. That's where feelings get hurt. So again, unless you're a jerk, because I don't know how else you get to that level, there shouldn't be ever that miscommunication. If you want to play competitive and you let people know, there's absolutely zero confusion in that.
Oh yeah, I've had people just go, oh, I'm not going to play competitive, and then they just, I don't know, pull out a rune deck.
Yeah,
Ian. What's that like?
What's that about?
I wouldn't say everyone's competitive, but it's a side here. But it's hard to really say, a power level.
I brought Saproling tokens, you monster.
I was playing Feldegriff. I was playing Group Hug, and you're like, I'm just going to play casual, just whips out a rune deck.
I've pinned that thing out, by the way. It's even more strong. But
good to know.
But yeah, it's not your competitive, you jerk.
It's not. And you both know that. But it's hard to really establish, because there's not like a specific list of you don't have like a Gantt chart or some sort of chart that shows you power levels that you can go to and slowly tick up the chart.
And those things are such a lie, because you see those tier lists all the time.
Yeah.
And I guess what the tier list is ideally designed to do is say, this is the best that maybe this person can do. But when you have 100 list deck, the commander can only really represent so much of that, because you can have a Zur deck and it could be silly, or it could be the worst nightmare on earth. Now, realistically, if you're playing the Zur deck, no one should ever take you seriously when you say it's casual, because they're going to murder you. But I mean, there's a few commanders that have stigmas behind it, for a good reason, because even if you play casual Zur, you could still just whip out the win cons if you really wanted to, or you decide it's time to end the show. I mean, but that's a weird example. There's not a lot of commanders that can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I could play my Zur silly, and then at any point, if I feel like ending the game, I can just whip out a win con, but yeah.
I know you. You're incapable of that. You will go straight for the win right away if you are given the power to.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I would say a very good indication of if a deck is competitive or not is how many tutors they're playing and how quickly they're playing those tutors. If they're starting like turn 1, turn 2, playing, Worldly Tutor, Enlightened Tutor, Mystical Tutor, those kind of tutors that are playing them really early, that's a good indication that they're trying to be competitive about their play style. Because someone who's just kind of playing a casual, I built this deck for fun, I don't see too many, tribal decks who are packing in all these tutors in order to get their selected pieces. Not that it doesn't happen, but usually those tutors mean they have a plan, they've streamlined their plan, and they're going for it.
And that brings up a good... It's not a question on here, but it really should be, is if you're trying to get into the competitive scene or you don't know what to buy into, I wouldn't even focus about the deck first. I would focus on the tutors, the rocks, and the lands. Because realistically, no matter what you need or what you're building, you're going to need those cards. And even if you decide that competitive isn't your thing and it annoys you or what have you, you can still disperse those to the point where you can have that tutor in any deck, even if it's not competitive. Yeah. But you're exactly right. Competitive EDH, because it's a 100-card deck, singleton, you need as many tutors, rocks, and lands as possible to give you that edge, because it's literally turn by turn.
It's what gives you your consistency in the deck, because if you can't be consistent in that deck, and it's already very hard to be consistent in a singleton format, those tutors are what give you that little bit of consistency. So if you don't have those tutors, it's very difficult to be competitive, unfortunately.
I think, but going back to the question, I think the biggest thing here is communication. If you're gonna come out and say, bring a competitive deck in a casual setting and not, be communicative about it, then there's obviously going to be a problem. So biggest thing is just communicating the whole thing, especially to new players.
And it's also, I would never whip out my cEDH deck against
Can
someone
we call it something else other than whipping out? I mean, how many times have we said that?
You know what?
I have been mature this entire time. I can't take it. There's only so much I get.
You know what?
I can't even say pull out without you thinking that way. So.
It's the same thing. There are children maybe listening to this. You don't... No, there's no children. No. Not if they know you.
They don't have the attention span to listen to. We're already 20 minutes in.
I like saying whipping out. It's like just whipping it out.
Yeah, the hand motion doesn't help. The only thing I need to hear next is the thump on the table.
Well, you know what? No one can see it.
Oh my god. I swear, Your Honor, I didn't think they would see it. God damn it.
We can move on.
And that brings us to our next question. So, favorite under the radar but still viable competitive EDH commanders.
No.
We kind of already touched on this. The commanders that can sit at a table and people will kind of disregard them because they're not one of the big hitters. Any of those decks that can just sit back and kind of get ignored because they're underestimated, they can be under the radar, and you can use almost any deck. Another thing is that just because a commander is sitting at the table, you don't necessarily get a deck list behind that. You can make some assumptions, but you can just as easily take any generic Sultai commander and then put an entire Hermit Druid list in that Sultai commander. No one's going to know the difference.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're completely right. So, I mean, to answer the question as in personal, I think Grand Arbor is my favorite, fairly under the table, because no one... I mean, it's a nasty deck. It has a stigma to it, but no one expects it to be competitive, not truly. But the great thing about it is it stops the other competitive decks, because I don't care how quick you think you are. Brago definitely doesn't have green behind it, but it can still ramp up pretty hard, and it's going to put down those stacks before you're able to combo off, and that murders people. Their entire strategy goes to the wayside. No one knows what they're doing anymore, and they don't really have a direct way to stop stacks. Because, again, they don't have that creature that's going to swing and do lethal.
It becomes a game of attrition from going through that a few times myself.
I have to say, some of those goblin decks, the mono red ones, those are very good under the table. Because, I mean, I've seen games where, everybody, the other three players who have these top tier blue decks, they're all countering each other while the goblin guy's just sitting there. And all of a sudden, while everyone's countering each other, he's just like, okay, cool, I got infinite goblins and everybody's dead.
I don't care what anyone says. If you let goblins get out of control, that is your own fault. You should never take that casualty, and you should never let that be. That should die first. I don't care if someone's playing Zur. I don't care if someone's playing Yidris or the...
Breakfast Hulk.
Yeah, no. The goblins die first.
Yeah.
I've died to those stupid little orcs more than anything else.
Yeah, it's true.
Calling them orcs. They're goblins.
They are just really small orcs.
They're like baby orcs.
Baby orcs. I'm sure there's a goblin somewhere offended.
Oh my goodness. All right. So our next question here is pre-game etiquette when playing with strangers and advising of power levels and such.
Kind of ties into a question we had previous with when we were talking about communicating with the table or getting a read of the room. Same thing there. In the end, don't be a dick.
I mean, like I said...
There we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't be rude,
That'll be the shortest question. But yeah, I mean, it's all a matter of being kind. Because at the end of the day, you'd rather be kind and accidentally play the wrong power level than be a jerk and even, do the correct thing with the power level. So it's casual. Even when you're playing competitive, it should still have that friendly attitude, at least in my opinion. There should never be a reason that you're focusing that hard, or at least to the point of being, rude. There's a difference between being quiet, taking your time, and, thinking things out. But then there's also that level of, just smacking someone emotionally because you're too frustrated right now to think straight. It's a person thing. That's kind of a Magic the Gathering thing overall that all the formats can learn from, but especially with EDH, I do not want to see that at the table because that is silly.
It goes back to, what I said earlier. I just ask right from the beginning, what power levels are we playing? And if they give me a confused look, I bring out chaos and we all have a good time.
That's your solution to everything. They look confused. I know what I'll play. Time Shifter. Maybe we should be giving advice.
Ooh, Eye of the Storm. My favorite.
Oh, thank you.
I ate before this.
All right. So on our next question here, would or should competitive EDH players be happy if the ban list was geared more towards them by banning the must-play cards like the hyper-efficient tutors, fast mana, major combo pieces, etc.?
I think what he's kind of stabbing at is in competitive EDH or any kind of type, if you get to any top tier format and you start trying to get competitive in any kind of format, there's going to be certain pieces that just keep rising to the top of others because they're more efficient, they're easier to cast, they do more things, whatever it may be. And I wouldn't say that banning that list would necessarily make cEDH better or worse. It would just obviously change what are the new top cards. You know, you cut off one shelf, it's just going to give another shelf rise to being the top.
Because when you have a singleton where you can't have multiple cards, especially within 100, as we talked about before, it becomes really difficult to play that consistently enough to it to be such an extreme problem. At the very least though, I wouldn't make a separate ban list. Maybe if it was 1v1, that would be a different discussion. But when you're playing multiplayer, as we've probably mentioned a few times now, there's so many variables with so many things, and you got 3 people potentially counting your stuff, that really you're probably not going to see anything. Unless there's something on the ban list that I'm missing that literally lets you win turn 1, and it's not some obscene, like you get this once out of a million times hand. The ban list should be fine.
And I mean, it's a 100-card deck. You know, it's a lot of cards to go through.
The way I kind of look at the ban list is, if we're at least competitive EDH, is that the ban list, the only reason that the ban list should be expanded, in my eye, is due to how hard it is to get some of these cards. Like pretty much any blue EDH deck, if you can, obviously not everyone can afford this, but you should have a Time Twister in that deck, because that card is super valuable in that spot, and being able to ruin other people's hands, redraw your hands, shuffle your library. There's combos that go in with that, and that's what I don't even know what the price is now, but it's at least $1,000, maybe more. Not everyone's going to have that card. So if you're going to argue a ban list certain cards for cEDH, then I would say you're going to go after those pricey pieces that no one can have in order to level the playing field of price. But my solution has always been proxies, which I know is a contentious subject in the Magic the Gathering world. So that could be a topic for another cast.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't ban based on what card is more powerful than another.
No, especially when you have EDH where it's supposed to be everyone and friendly and stuff like that. The only limitations you should have is price point, at least for other people that you're trying to get into there. So yeah, proxy, again, we could talk about that another time, but that's more of a conversation to have than just something that's on the list itself. Right. But we can move on from there.
Well, okay, so the next question here is, are people who look down on non-competitive EDH commander players unintelligent or just uninformed?
Wow. Someone had an emotion about something very specific when they wrote this. They already have the answer in their own mind.
I couldn't read that with a straight face.
So, I mean, yeah, you're right. Someone that's playing competitive shouldn't be looking down on other people. It's like being like the king of like Cards Against Humanity. It's like, okay, you won, but it's Cards Against Humanity. Like, you really want to be like the #1 at hide and seek and be proud of that to the point of like, oh, these commoners, they don't hide in the closet, the scrubs. I don't understand.
It just, how rude do you want to be? You know? You're interacting with other people. I wouldn't take those people seriously because most of the time they're just trying to give you a rise anyway. It's just not worth engaging them. You know, you're playing this game that you can't really prove or.
and to be fair, because I made fun of, and that was probably a little too mean to some people, but like you can be proud of being a good player. You can be proud of winning your competitive like table for that night or what have you, and be like, I did a really good job, good for me. But you can't sit down with a Leovold deck or whatever have you, and then you're playing with a bunch of casuals who are playing precons. and then, judging them like they were in the wrong for doing that. Because
Yeah,
that's
turn to
exactly what the
wheel.
format was for. cEDH has its, place. I don't think, that's, wrong. I know some, casual players look at that like that's some, horrific, unspoken thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, you can have both worlds. They're fine. You can play in both worlds, but you don't bring them together. And you definitely don't judge the other one because you personally decide one way or another. It's silly.
It's people judging people. It's been happening well before any of us have been alive. It's not going to change anytime soon either.
Yeah.
Unless someone's playing Chaos.
Excuse you. Chaos will always have a place in EDH. That's the whole point of EDH.
No one said the cards that you play worthy of maintenance when they made EDH. You know what? Email Sheldon, give him your deck list and say, were you thinking of this when you made this game?
All right.
Richard Garfield.
Oh gosh. So our next question here is, which commander has given you the most trouble? And I have to say, honestly, whatever commander Quinn has played.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I think the one that's given me the most trouble is either Grand Arbiter, because it's super stacksy and slows games down, especially in competitive, because the point is not to slow the game down, or Brago.
Yeah,
why are those both my decks?
The Staxy decks can be tough. Another problem I have with those Stax decks is they make the games awfully long. Oh man, I've sat in competitive games that can be 2 hours, 3 hours long.
And it's not supposed to be that way.
And the entire time I've played maybe, 3 cards.
I just want to enjoy your time. That's why we got at the table.
If I have to pay 14 mana for a mana crypt, there is something wrong with the game.
That was only one time. Worst part is I blew up the mana crypt after.
Oh, you cruel man.
Monster.
Cruel man. But now, I mean, as far as decks that give me trouble, I haven't found one specific deck that I've sat across and be like, oh, that deck. There are archetypes that I kind of worry about, like Stacks is one of them, just because I know the game can get boring to me very quickly when someone gets Stacks out. Hermit Druid can be a scary one, too.
I was about to say the same thing. That kid's Hermit Druid, if there's anyone that wins consistently, or gets that little turn 3 win if he's not, messed with, that is frighteningly fast. You have a few decks that I know, if we let you go at all, it's going to win, but that's usually after, turn 4 or 5. But him is consistent turn 3. I don't think I've ever seen a deck that does it that consistently.
I'm actually retooling my Hulk Weaver deck to where it has Hermit Druid in it, and it's going to be a
You think I will stab you on the podcast?
I mean, you already stabbed me anyway, so...
That's her, first of all.
You're gripping that pen pretty hard over there. But yeah, that Hermit Druid has given me anxiety because when I first played against it, I had no idea what it did, to be perfectly honest. I was like, oh, whatever.
No one ever does, I feel.
Turn 3 just wins, and then I'm like, okay. Second game I played, turn 3 just wins. I have to say, that's a pretty hard commander to play against.
It's never a good sign when the player goes and takes his entire library and just flips it over.
Yeah.
It's usually not a good sign.
Because I know a lot of decks, they have... things to do in case they lose their main objective, like you have Yargos Will and you have Zur and everything like that. But with Hermit Druid, you have to exile that crazy little thing, and then you got to remove all the pieces to get it back, which isn't easy.
Yeah.
That thing comes back way too quickly,
Absolutely.
And it's game over the second it does its thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, my thing is just trying to win before he does. And pray no one counters me. That's my whole tactic.
That's why I play Stacks.
Yeah,
and that's why we hate you.
There's a lot of stabbing going around on this podcast. It started with 3 and it ended with 1. So, next one.
Okay, so let me see here. Which commanders do you think are underrated?
Well, I feel like we've already covered this. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, maybe specific commanders. Let's try that. What do you think, you saw and you're like, that's the bee's knees, and everyone's like, no, you're wrong. Everything about you is wrong.
First time I played Purphoros in a competitive deck list, I wasn't I know what Purphoros does, that it can be very scary, but it's almost like the Goblin deck in the sense that it kind of just explodes out of nowhere, and if you really don't keep an eye on it, it can get out of hand real quick.
Mono Red has those surprises where I think it's not so much the commander itself, but there's only so many commanders in Mono Red that you can do it with. But I think that's just the underrated color. It's amazing that Mono Red does better than Boros.
It does.
You know what? We have a buddy, and I think with his deck, I completely, I underestimated it. It was that all shaman deck that our friend had.
That was insane.
He made an all shaman deck, and he just constantly won with it. And I'm like, why?
Like the snake shamans? Or?
Yeah. I don't know what's up with him. I never met him sober. I don't know what the heck's going on with him. But he somehow just combos out with... Absolutely, he made like a Pokédex deck, like in Standard, because that was a thing for a while. Completely destroyed everyone in that. No one expected it. He made shaman decks. Every deck he builds, he's the most asinine thing. But it always ends up doing amazing. And he's just never consciously there to, I think, fully appreciate it. I love the dude to death. He's one of my favorite people to ever play with. But, like, he's a savant. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Oh, those are definitely underrated decks. You can't expect those out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would say, like, the commanders that aren't, like, the ones that you expect to set at the table, any of them can be underrated, you know? And...
Now that I think about it, it's usually the issue isn't the underrated, it's the overrated commanders when they first come out. Like, everyone thought Atraxa would be, like, the number one thing on Earth. Everyone thought Bray would be the number one thing on Earth. And, quite honestly, I don't see either too much. I know Atraxa, it could be scary with Super Friends or, in fact, kind of. But it's nowhere near the competitive level that they pretended it was. Brea was another giant whiff. I know I tried to build it.
Yep.
I thought that would be amazing.
Honestly, that deck turned out being kind of boring.
Yeah, I didn't like Brea either. Yeah. I tried it a couple times and it just didn't feel...
People thought EDH was going under. They were acting like that was going to be the end all.
People always say Magic's dying in some way or another.
Yeah. I think the only one that stayed true to the fear of it was Leovold, but then it got banned. So whatever.
I loved Leovold.
I think the problem with Leovold was that it was like playing a stacks deck that had the stacks piece as the commander, which I guess Grand Arbiter is kind of the same way, but
not to the same level.
Yeah, exactly. No. Grand Arbiter was just stacksy. Leovold was win stacksy because you would wheel and keep your entire hand size. Mm-hmm. The other opponents would just be screwed SOL.
Yeah, especially when you have so many wheels.
Yeah. Casual is what really caused the problem because if you try playing Leovold casual, that deck is just, if you're trying to do what he's supposed to do, you cannot play it casually. It's not going to happen.
So, this next question. Ooh, okay. So, why do you play your favorite deck and why? And if people have been following me and my articles and everything like that, y'all are going to know my answer. It's going to be my 5-color Chaos deck, and I love playing it because I love to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
No comments?
My favorite...
Just tears.
I like playing your Feldergriff deck a lot. I think that's one of my favorites because it's just silly. And my favorite decks are the ones where I don't expect to win, and if I do win, it's a gift. But there's no anxiety of trying to win whatsoever. Probably... I don't want to be a horrible person and say my Grand Arbiter, because I actually don't like Grand Arbiter either. I like it less than you guys. I have to play it, but I have to. I have to be the voice of reason in this nonsense. But, I think your Feldergriff's my favorite.
I would say Ruin is definitely one of my favorites, because I like the idea of being able to implement control, but not through the traditional sources like an instant counter spell or a board wipe, but rather controlling elements of the game for my favor. There's a piece in Ruin, Stonehorn Dignitary, and it's really subtle. It just stops an opponent from attacking turn. But because Ruin is able to replicate those effects, you pretty much turn it into a hard lock on any deck that's trying to do any kind of combat-based strategy. It's really effective at bringing pieces that might be good in single instance moments and just transferring that to long-term gain, which is really nice to me. But as far as your Chaos deck, I got to say that has made some of the most aggravating experiences.
Oh, you have fun and you know it.
Oh, yeah.
We had to pull out a blackboard because of you. With the stupid Cruel Entertainment nonsense.
Oh, man.
You know how many times that got copied over? I didn't actually play my turn the entire game. Someone else kept taking turns with my deck.
I'm sure I've had games where
abused.
My brain hurt so much I just had to walk away and close my eyes for a little bit.
When the judge stops being a judge, they quit judging. She's made people quit judging. What kind of level of nonsense is that?
I have. People have called the judge over and I'm like, no, I'm explaining this just fine. No, I want to talk to a judge. Fine, bring the judge over.
Yeah.
And so the judge would come over, scratch their head, shake their head, and walk away.
Yeah.
They would not deal with the nonsense of my deck.
And I honestly can't blame them.
Yeah.
It's just nonsense.
You know what's sad is when they all look up the answers and they can't find it. Because, like, I don't expect the judge to know everything, but I know they have their little database or whatever, and I watch them just try and figure this out.
I watched a judge, like, he wanted to with all what left of their dignity, was just looking up, like, for 10 minutes before finally just being like, I don't know.
I guarantee you, though, you play her deck, and that Judge Tower game becomes the easiest thing in the world. It's some level of nonsense. I mean, what's the win condition of your thing? Just, like, making everyone scoop out of, like, I can't deal with this anymore?
Frustration. That's pretty much how it beats me.
So, there's two ways that game normally ends. Everybody either scoops out of frustration, or the second thing is some people are like, no, I want to see this through.
I tried playing it once, and I got blackmailed the entire game because I had one card left in the deck, and it was the that thing that doubles your life, command beacon, or not a command beacon, but
Beacon of Immortality.
Yeah, Beacon of Immortality. And someone had a counter in that. And again, this is the only card in my deck, so if I played it, I would lose.
Right.
So I had to double his life the entire game.
Oh, he was
to stay alive.
Please kill me. Please, God, kill me. He was at 100,000 life.
That's terrible.
That sounds awful.
Because he was a store owner, and he just had this counter. He's just like, you double my life or you die. And I'm like, well, let's just keep playing.
I don't even want to know what circumstances.
He ended up losing.
Oh, God.
All right. So the next one is, what has competitive EDH taught you about EDH, and how relevant is EDH to competitive EDH?
Wait, what? Hold on. Let me read that again.
I would say power level differences, because a lot of people don't really understand that there's this other, like, you can have a very powerful commander deck, but there's like this section tier above it at cEDH. It kind of plays in its own world.
It's over 9,000.
I think cEDH actually teaches you how to play Magic, because I think the one cool thing about EDH is, like, as someone who only plays EDH, like, I try to play Standard and other things, and they actually play the game right. They actually, like, do the steps and everything else. And and you completely forget that because you just go, okay, I'm playing this and everything, and like no one cares because it's so casual. Mm-hmm. When you play competitive, you actually have to
go
do that
through
right.
The steps.
You have to go there.
And it's nice. I kind of prefer the EDH way of doing things because again, I play EDH as silliness.
More fluid, yeah.
But I mean, in terms of what I've learned, it's actually how to play Magic.
Yeah. So. It's not necessarily like you're being like a rude and trying to make someone go through the steps. It's more if you have to because the interactions are so...
Because you're trying to win.
Yeah. Well, just interactions of how everyone can play.
There could be split second cards.
Stifle, all these little things that happen. You got to play through the steps. So it is a good way. I wouldn't say teach new players how to play, but if you take like a casual player and you want to teach them intricacies of stack and how that works and the phases, it's a good way to go.
I like this next question.
Okay. This is the question I've been waiting for. So, what was the worst EDH game you've ever experienced?
I think we heard mine.
So, let me tell you a story about my worst game that I've experienced.
Not my father dying. That wasn't enough for you. that was second to this.
So
apparently, I'm more cruel than your father.
So let me tell you a story about Quinn here, my buddy Quinn.
Oh, no.
So this is like, I'm excited about my Zur deck. I'm excited about, playing it, and I play my Ad Nauseam. And Quinn here goes, oh, cool, I'm going to K-grip it, and I died.
I K-gripped her Phyrexian Unlife, for clarification.
She's so mad she can't even think straight.
No.
Yeah, I'm just seeing red right now, because...
No. I think they meant more in terms of line, like, what was the worst, like, flat-out just EDH game? Like, when you did those EDH tournaments, I know those were worse for you. You can't...
Oh, I mean, I've got some stories. I mean, people have told me just straight up that, I was in a weird tournament setting for a couple of times. I went to this store, and a couple of times it was like a weird 1v1 competitive EDH environment with French rules.
So it was French with the Railer ban list. So everyone was playing 1v1 Zur, for example. And
God, that sounds awful.
Yeah. It was weird.
So I was playing a mono black Skithrix. It wasn't, super competitive, but I won a pretty decent amount of games. I've topped 8 maybe twice, but I never actually won the tournament. But I've had people tell me, I'm going to burn your deck, Or I've had somebody slam the table so hard it knocks all my cards over, and they just go outside and have a cigarette, and people are trying to console them, and it kind of makes it a very hostile environment, but, you know, it feeds my inner troll, so joke's on them.
Well, that's one thing that's regular competitive EDH with 4 players. It's a lot harder to just, you know, assign blame to why you lost with you have 3 different targets. I mean, yeah, sometimes one person gets isolated. I have seen that, or that one person gets isolated and then attacked for it. But generally, most games, there are multiple contributions to your loss. Like, multiple things happen to you from different people. So it's a lot tougher for you to single out that one person and say, oh, you're the reason I lost. In a 1v1... You got that one person. That's it.
And you're kind of stuck with them. So it's
I think the worst I usually get is the ones that like rage out. Because again, you know, politics and everything else, and someone idea of like playing politics wrong, and then they, you know, kind of throw a hissy fit. It's either like a straight up, you know, I actually respect it more. If you get up at the table, you take your cards, and you walk out of the store, I respect you on a better level than like the ones that like stay quiet and angry and they're frustrated and they ruin the entire night like through their anger, and then like the next game they're like targeting you but like pretending they're not doing, like the little games, like the passive aggressive nonsense that happens all the time, and it's ridiculous.
You know, the other games too, that they kind of make me a little sad, because sometimes I'll be like, you know, I'll be at like a pre-release, let's say, and sometimes I'll be, you know, chatting with the other person and we're having a generally good time, but then if I start to win, they progressively start to get a little more short with their answers. They start to get more, you know, more focused. They start to shake a little bit. And it's something I see a lot. And then eventually, like, if I win for once, which I don't really win often, but the times that I do win, they start to rage out. One guy just, like, slammed the table and goes, "This is BS," and cursing, and they have to have a cigarette, and I'm like, come on, like, we're just having a good time, like, we're here to have a good time.
I'll tell you what, like, because you know, obviously, you know, dating someone that plays Magic either competitively or casually, like, there actually totally is a complete difference, because, like, you know, when you go to like pre-releases or you go to tournaments and stuff like that, you have people that like rage out at you, or you know, they're socially awkward or somewhere on the spectrum or whatever, and you know, we all deal with that. But it's interesting because I've seen that level, I know that level, and, you know, I can handle that, or, you know, sometimes it bothers me or what have you, but, like, I've seen them do it to her, and it is on a whole other level.
Really?
Like, I think there's, I guess, I don't know if it's just a girl going in there, and then they have to deal with, like, the whatever awkward feelings on top of everything else. It is a weird beast, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of enjoy it, Loki, so I'll just throw her out there and just be like,
make this person
strut a little bit as you walk over to the table.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, it doesn't really bother me. If people rage out, I you know, it's kind of silly in my head. I kind of laugh about it in my own way, because, you know, they're just being awkward, and at the end of the day, we're playing a game to have a good time, and if you're going to rage out, that's on you. That's not on me.
It shows the quality of person they are, honestly.
Exactly.
The number of times I've used EDH games as a assessment of people I've interacted with.
I'm telling you right now, though, if you know you're about to deal with that, the best thing you should do. And this is not the best thing you should do. This is a totally terrible advice.
I never take your advice.
Yeah, there we go. But you should totally just be like, oh yeah, no, this is my first time playing. You know, my boyfriend gave me a deck. Oh, see how it goes. And you're like, oops, I won. I guess is that like, ask them if you won. Don't even realize you won, and watch that fiasco.
That reminds me of something. Totally on me. I totally didn't even think about it when I said it,
that's
but
right, you've done it.
It was my first tournament, and I was so excited because it was the first time I've ever won, and I was so in shock, and I said it out loud. I was like, I won? Oh my god, I never win! And the guy this is the same guy who went to his friend and said right in front of me, looking me in the eyes, that he was going to burn my deck. And to be honest, I felt so bad that I said it. I was just so excited that I won one, because I literally never win those tournaments.
Look, I played a lot of games. I have lost to literally everyone else but you. He's been playing for 30 years. He's been, like, you know, training in front of a mirror.
Well, you know, to be fair, though, this is the same person who tried to tell me that something without flying can block my flying creature, so
that's another thing with girls I see all the time, too, is they'll like take advantage. They'll it's really weird because you know, everyone tries you sometimes with rules or tries to put it in their favor, but like like what she just said, someone like tells them like, oh no, I could block flying with like a card that can't block flying,
and I knew better.
Yeah, and like silly things like, you know, the Draina thing. There's so many silly examples where I guess it's just like, she's a girl, she doesn't know better.
I think you're touching a woman in gaming at that point. That's a scary conversation. Because I gotta agree, I've seen some instances where women can be definitely treated differently in like other games I've played.
But I've also seen it with guys with other guys. Like if somebody knows you're clearly a new player, some people will try to play the rules in their favor. Yeah. I've seen that a lot.
I think people just assume girls are new, but
yeah.
Yeah. It's weird because again I get to watch all this.
Yeah, you get front row seats. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, it just comes down to people. Yeah.
All right, next one.
So the next one here is, what is the worst color combination in EDH?
You want to say it on 3?
One,
2, 3.
Boros. I probably should explain why.
There's really nothing to explain with that. It is Boros, sir.
But for the audience, you don't get draw. Of the audience, go ahead.
No, you don't get draw. All you can do really with Boros is try and have a creature-based board state or land destruction thing, and that takes way too slow.
Not to say there isn't a competitive list for Boros, but it is a competitive list for Boros. It's not like options. It's this is what you do, because any other options are either too slow or just not going to work when someone's comboing off in 2 turns.
Better for casual.
Yes.
And what the worst part, what frustrates me most about Boros is it wants to be, you know, a creature-heavy kind of way to win. It wants to be an army. But green does it better. You get the worst of both worlds. It's weird because like green gets the ramp, it gets the card draw, it's
a little bit of everything,
Quite honestly, if you had Boros with green in there, you'd have the ideal like token way to win. But you don't even have that. You just get
right, yeah. They don't have the access to the ramp pieces that they need, the draw pieces that they need. They get some removal, but most of the removal is either too expensive and board wipey. Like 4 mana for a removal spell is just not going to cut it in cEDH.
But sir, Path of Exile. Yeah, and then you're going to say,
right, which is why people do still play white. But you know, at the same time, you're playing white and red. You don't have access to the powerful spells that you need to really get anywhere. I think that's pretty well covered from other people as well. Why Boros struggles. You know, not to knock those people who play them. It's cool that you're making it work, but
good for you for trying. Oh my god, that Boros check. The person at the IHOP they played Boros, didn't they? Didn't they play Angels?
Oh yeah, well they were playing my Angels deck. I had a what was it, Aurelia deck that I let them borrow. I usually let newer players borrow that deck.
That was one of her first decks, and she said, "Oh, those swords that are ridiculously expensive. Let's just buy them all."
Listen, I had the funds to support this back in the day.
Back in the day,
so
3 years ago,
I bought them. I splurged, but to be fair, I only bought 1 per paycheck, so whatever. All right. So the next question here. So somebody asked me for any ideas on a Tatiova competitive EDH build.
The main idea is to build something else.
Probably should, for those of you who don't know, we can describe the card really quick. It's a 5-drop. It's blue, green, with 3 colorless. And it's a Merfolk Druid, legendary. Whenever a land enters the battlefield in your control, gain 1 life, draw a card, and it's a 3/3.
So it's an amazing commander. I like it. I like it a lot. But the issue is it's not going to be competitive. Because what it wants to do, it takes too long to do it.
The effect itself is very fantastic. It's awesome. But for 5 mana, you put that thing out maybe turn 3, maybe. Turn 2 would be struggling. Never turn 1. I don't know how you do turn 1. But turn 3, you get it out. And then the only way you're going to make it competitive and win in a combo state is recurring land. So if you look at the cards that recur land, you already have to look at black, because a lot of the land recursions kind of in black with Gitrog and a couple of the other, like what's that, dredge land that you need, that's black as well. So recurring lands without that black is very difficult, and you're already using a slow-paced commander, And at that point, you're in blue-green. You're not going to win with the way you intend to, and there are better options.
It's a great casual card, though. It's a great casual commander, but for competitive, I would pass.
Yeah. And I mean, you could build it all the ways. If you wanted to make it thematic, if you want to make it Merfolk Druid, of course, it doesn't actually support those archetypes, but it'd still be fun because you're getting so much value out of the commander itself. Or if you want to make it a land matters deck, or you want to make it, you could make a slow combo deck because you are drawing cards out of it. But there's nothing that thing's gonna do.
You might be able to throw it in maybe a Grixis bill with that black in there, and then look to do some of the land combos within those color combinations and slide her in there. But her at the helm, you're missing some pieces to really make it work well. To be able to, again, you're playing in a format that people are looking to win. Turn 3, 2, 4 around that area, and I just don't see Tatiova getting off her legs quick enough.
Yeah.
She doesn't have legs, by the way, in the picture.
Got that beautiful tail.
I mean, well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I wish you luck. If you got an idea, feel free to send it to us. I'd love to see it, but I don't see it from this standpoint looking at her.
Yeah. So the next question here, it's kind of a long one, and I'm kind of quoting it straight from the person who asked it. So here's the quote. This person said, I think that Sol Ring isn't as good in Commander as it is in other formats because it's only great in the first 3 turns. Other ramp spells get more than 1 card out of the library, and from mid to late game, it takes the place of the win con. So what are your thoughts on Sol Ring?
So when it comes to that, again, when it comes to competitive, or assuming that this was about competitive, realistically, it's all about that opening hand. You want that Sol Ring right away, because imagine if you drop Sol Ring and, say, Mana Crypt. Because realistically, when you put Mana Crypt in there, you're putting that in there because you want another Sol Ring, or you want that in addition to Sol Ring. So you want that opening burst, and that's what it's for. Yeah, you risk it if you're going later in the game and you get a dead draw, but quite honestly, you never want to be in that situation anyway. So,
and I think it's actually kind of a false statement to say it's only great in the first 3 turns, because there are many instances where that Sol Ring, if you're playing any kind of artifact recursion like Brago, Brago, there are others that you can't think of them right now, but any kind of untapping or tapping or recursion with the artifacts, it's still a fantastic card to have in your deck. So it's a lot more than just whether or not you have it out in the first 3 turns. So I definitely wouldn't say take it out. There's very few reasons to take out Sol Ring, and I haven't found many good arguments. I would say the better argument would be to ban Sol Ring, give me another slot in my deck.
So honestly, the cool thing I like about Sol Ring is it's that one card that everyone gets. Yeah. Because when it comes to Sol Ring, like I can understand Mana Crypt because not everyone can afford like $100 card unless it went up or down.
It's more obtainable.
Yeah, so everyone has it. Everyone gets that lottery chance. Everyone gets that chance to get over about everyone else. Yeah. It's nice. It for a casual setting especially, where you're playing to have fun and you get that little joy of drawing that Sol Ring that everyone gets to enjoy no matter what deck you're playing. It has its spot, and I hope it never gets banned, but I see the frustrations of having, basically a 98 card deck instead of a 99.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've played so many games where I would just tap a land, tap Sol Ring, get a tap Sol Ring for another artifact, tap that artifact for another one, and then I just got... Pretty much, I'm just a couple turns ahead of everyone, so I think Sol Ring is pretty viable in Commander.
Like, for example, just because I play Grand Arbiter all the time, Grand Arbiter can either be a turn 4 Commander or a turn 2 only because of Sol Ring. Or Mana Crypt. Yeah. Because, again, if I play that land, I get Sol Ring out. Next turn, I have 2 lands and Sol Ring. That's Grand Arbiter coming out, and then no one gets to do anything. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible.
You should
that's great.
Burn the deck.
Oh, you wish you had one now.
But it is good for people who can't get a hold of a Mana Crypt. Sol Ring is a really great substitute for it.
Yeah, as we already discussed, there's a lot more to it than just being able to play it in the first 3 turns. It has more applications and uses, but I think that's a pretty much a general consensus for anyone who thinks about Sol Ring.
Yeah. So the next question I have here is, should Paris Mulligans be ruled out when playing with someone using a competitive deck?
It's already ruled out, isn't it?
I mean, it depends what group you're playing with. But
but I mean, officially, you don't do it anymore, right?
I haven't done Paris Mulligans in a few years. They were nice when I was first learning EDH because, you know, it kind of gave a little bit of forgiveness to honestly what's bad deck building. You could get away with running, you know, maybe running a 40 land deck, just way too many, and, you know, have 6 lands in your hand, be able to get rid of a few, or vice versa, have like only 1 land.
I'm not going to lie, I was kind of sad when it was gone because I went to a tournament with a deck completely built around my first hand, and they said, no, it's no more.
Honestly, you should know the group you're playing with. So if you're all playing, like, truly casual, not you're saying casual and it's not casual, but like you're actually truly playing casual, you're playing kitchen magic, or you're playing silliness, you should have it because it's actually, it's truly helps that spirit of what EDH, again, should be, quote unquote. But when it came to competitive, there's no way because you win too quickly. It's too broken. Like, for example,
Monsters
when we went to a tournament... the same day I went to the tournament, the day that rule actually became official, where they didn't allow it anymore, and I was playing a Duretti deck, and I was no longer able to actually do anything because I only had so many lands. Because with Duretti, especially with that Mulligan, you don't put in a lot of lands because
I think you had 15 or something.
It was something stupid, and so I lost every single game. It was bad.
Yeah.
But that's the reason why, though, is because you don't want a Duretti player, you don't want a blue combo player.
It's too powerful in an already very well-tuned deck, assuming that's a real cEDH deck. It's just another tool that just makes it way too powerful to be able to construct possibly even turn 1 win hand. I've had that happen. With my
we know you
deck.
have your monsters.
And if you give those Paris Mulligans to someone, it's just too much sometimes.
Yeah, it'd be more for a casual thing, but I don't think, you know, for competitive, it's,
Discuss with your play group if make sure everyone understands the advantages of it, you know. I would say it's not a good idea if you're running competitive decks. But if you want to play that way, you're that kind of monster, go ahead.
Speaking of monsters, read this next one.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, all right. So this next question is, and it kind of goes with what we were talking about earlier, is it fair to bring a competitive EDH deck to a play group playing Commander and not say so?
Are you ready to lose a Twitter follower? Because I will answer that. That is not nice to do. I mean...
Yeah.
How rude do you want to be?
It depends. If you know the people you're playing with, that's one thing. But if you're going to a bunch of randoms, you pull Zur out, you're a monster.
But it depends because, like, if I'm whipping out a Zur and not saying it's competitive or not, most people are going to assume it's competitive.
Yeah, it's not a nice thing to do.
But it's not nice.
If you're doing that, there's one of two things happening there. Either you're being a dick, and you just want to, you know, prove to the world that you've got the biggest schlong out there and throw that on the deck there, or you're truly ignorant of what the rest of the world or community of Magic players are used to, and you just have a deck that maybe someone handed to you, or you bought online because you thought it was a good idea to drop $500 on the deck. And you just take it to your first table and you just didn't know. I'm sure that might happen, although I'd be very surprised if it does. And even if it did, I don't think they'd be playing that deck optimally anyway.
The only excuse that I could think of is if you're used to playing competitive and then you go to a new group and you're not used to that, and then that's a very rude awakening.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I guarantee you, as much as I'm joking about these answers, people will hate you.
Yes,
and it's one of the rudest things you can do. And that's actually like towards gameplay.
And you don't want to be known as the jerk who brought a competitive deck in, like, because no one's going to want to play with you at that point, especially if you go to that store often. You
better be the nicest human being in the world.
They may forgive you the first time, but definitely no repeat offenses there.
People are going to be salty towards you for a while. I've seen it happen.
Absolutely.
So. Of course you would. I'd expect it from Quinn, though.
Yeah.
Self-esteem.
You knew what you were getting into.
So our next and last question is, if someone new asks to play some Commander, is it the responsibility of the player to ask if competitive EDH is being played, or of the usuals to tell them?
I think we've kind of covered this a few times, and honestly, it's a responsibility of both. If both of you stay silent, or either you in the right.
Yeah.
It's more just communication.
If there's an answer to that, I mean, if no one's saying anything and then there's a miscommunication on power levels, then whatever. And then I'm sure the next game something better be said, or at least someone's going to pull out a different deck.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want people revenge decking you. I guess that's a term I just made up now. But but like, yeah, if you pull out a deck, you beat someone, and then they're going, okay, well now I'm going to ruin your night, and they revenge deck you. It becomes more than just, upping the power level. Now they have the vendetta against you. And either it's small and it's silly or what have you, why bring that to the table? So
you're playing EDH to have a good time with either friends or people you're just meeting and trying to make friends, hopefully. Maybe there are people out there who just play just to
power play.
Ruin people's nights and then leave.
It's
I got those gamers.
It's all right. I'll break up your relationship, so. I'll lose a family member doing it.
Yeah,
but
Dr. Phil over here.
Couples therapy every Thursday night.
Oh, yeah.
I will not lose the game. But you will lose the relationship, sir. That was so bad.
It sounded bad.
But the bottom line is, you're playing to have fun, and I think communication is the key. Maybe mention, like I do, what's your power level? What are you going to play? Try to just be vocal and don't be a dick.
That's just being the general consensus of tonight.
Yeah.
No one knows what they're doing. It's one thing or another. And just don't be a dick.
Try to be nice to people.
You know what's sad though? Like that's kind of it though. That's like if you really want to boil EDH down, be considerate.
And don't be a dick.
And no one knows what they're doing. It's just,
and if you're not those, don't be surprised when they don't want you to play with them again.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make friends, you be a friend.
The worst thing that can happen to you is being hated out of the group, especially if it was something that you could have prevented.
Yeah. And most of the time, I'm willing to bet it is preventable. But,
have we ever seen a fist fight during a game?
No.
I don't think we have.
You know what? Actually, I have seen rages. When I went to the Grand Prix in Orlando, remember there was an incident where I think they got handsy, but it wasn't like full-on like physical assault or anything, but there was shouting, multiple judges ran over. I didn't really see it. I only saw when the judges were running over, but it was a pretty aggressive setting, and I think one of them was kicked out or something like that, but I can't say for sure.
Yeah, I haven't personally seen anything violent happen.
No, I mean, I've seen people rage out of the store, but I've seen people, like, slam the table and accidentally knock cards down or some silly thing like that, but yeah, I haven't seen a fist fight yet.
No.
I feel like I'm missing out now. Yeah.
At least we're not getting violent yet.
I'm not playing enough stacks.
I've always gotten violent with you.
I'll stack your stacks.
Oh, Winter Orb, you're Winter Orb.
Yeah, when I get quiet when you're playing stacks, it's me suppressing my violence.
Alright guys, well, that's the podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it.
All hour and 78 minutes of it.
Yeah.
So if you ever have any questions or comments, concerns, or you just generally want to talk about anything,
tell us we're wrong.
Tell us we're wrong. Start a fist fight. Flip a table even.
Film it first.
You can reach me at Facebook, Twitter. Just look up the girl with the lotus tattoo and you'll see my face with red eyes and wonder, why does she have red eyes? But yeah, that's the podcast.
She plays chaos. She's a demon.
When she gets angry, they get red. It's pretty scary.
Don't make me angry.